Most vehicles have a lower dash panel or an under dash panel that must be removed for access to the wires necessary for installation. This panel is easy to remove and will usually require a Phillips screwdriver or a metric socket set. The majority of the installation is performed under the driver's side dash panel. Depending on the vehicle, it may also be necessary to remove the lower steering column cover for access to the ignition switch harness. On most vehicles, you can access these wires without removing the column cover. If the vehicle has an anti-theft system, you will need to remove this column cover to install the transponder antenna loop around the ignition switch tumbler. This will be explained more in depth in the anti-theft bypass section of the video. First, you will need to locate a good body ground and attach the black wire clip to this ground. Use the color code chart to help find and locate the proper 12-volt constant wire in your vehicle. After locating this wire at the ignition switch harness, probe it with the test light. When you probe the correct 12-volt wire, the red light will show on the test light. Strip the wire until the copper is showing and clip the red lead on your computer-friendly test light to the 12-volt constant wire. Look at the test light. You should now have a red and green light glowing dimly. The test light is now ready to use. The ignition wires install at the vehicle's ignition switch harness. It receives its 12-volt constant input from the heavy gauge red wires from the 12-volt source. The other 4 heavy gauge wires must be used and will be covered in future instructions. Once you have found and tested the correct 12-volt constant wire, using the test probe, separate the wire. Then insert the 2 heavy red wires and the red wire from the 4-pin anti-theft harness into the 12-volt constant wire. If your vehicle has 2 12-volt constant wires, you will need to strip back about 1 inch of the wire insulation or until the copper is exposed on both wires. Wrap the wire around one side, then the other, and finally around itself. Using electrical tape, cover all exposed copper, then secure the electrical tape with wire ties. Pull lightly on the wires to make sure you have made a secure connection. Do not connect the heavy gauge wires to the control module at this time. On the vehicle color code sheet, locate the proper wire color for the ignition number 1. The ignition number 1 wire may also show green on the test light until the key is turned on. Turn the key on and the test light should turn red and remain red. After testing this wire, strip back about 1 inch of the wire insulation until the copper is exposed. Using the test probe, separate the wire. Then insert the wire. Using electrical tape, cover all exposed copper, then secure the electrical tape with wire ties. Pull lightly on the wires to make sure you have made a secure connection. With the key in the off position, the ignition number 2 wire may show green on the test light. When the key is turned on, it will turn red and remain red through each turning of the key. With some ignition number 2 wires, it may turn off when the key is in the cranking position, or in some cases it may turn off in the accessory position, and it will always turn off when the key is turned off. Connect the white and red ignition number 2 wire to the vehicle's ignition number 2 wire. Duplicate the remaining steps for the installations of the ignition number 1 wire and the 12-volt constant wires. Most vehicles have an accessory wire, and some vehicles will also have an accessory number 2 wire. However, the accessory number 2 wire is almost never used. With the color code sheet, locate the proper wire color for the accessory number 1. With the ignition key in the off position, the accessory number 1 wire may show green on the test light. When the key is turned on, it should turn red and remain red. This wire will lose power when the ignition key is turned to the off position. Connect the white and black accessory wire to the accessory number 1 wire on the vehicle. In most cases, the accessory number 1 wire will lose power during the cranking cycle. Once the vehicle is running with the ignition key, the accessory wire will again show red on the test light. With the color code sheet, locate the proper wire color for the starter wire. It should test as follows. With the ignition key in the off position, the starter wire may show green on the test light. When the key is turned to the start or crank position, it will turn red and remain red until the vehicle starts or until you release the ignition key from the start or crank position. This wire will only show red on the test light when cranking the engine with the ignition key. Connect the yellow and black wire to the vehicle's starter wire using the same connection method. The black wire. This is the main ground wire for the module. This wire must be connected to a good, clean body ground for the unit to operate properly. Make sure it is attached to a good ground source that is free of any paint or dirt that may keep it from making a good ground connection. This wire should be your first connection in this harness. Do not connect the heavy red wires to the module until the black wire has been connected first, and you have plugged this harness into the module. The blue and black positive brake wire. This wire connects to the vehicle's brake switch and allows 12-volt power when the brake pedal is pressed to turn off the remote starter. This wire is very important and is also used to shut off the remote starter and to program the remote transmitter. The brown parking light wire. This wire is the connection to the parking lamp circuit and will provide a visual indicator when the vehicle is running in remote start mode. It is also required for programming. There is a switch on the control module set to provide a 12-volt positive output on the brown wire. If your vehicle requires a negative pulse to activate the parking light circuit, you must move the switch to the control module to the negative position before beginning. Please consult your wire color code chart to determine your vehicle's parking light polarity. Most vehicles have a transponder anti-theft system, which is used by Ford, Chrysler, and all imports. When installing a transponder bypass system, it is necessary to have an extra ignition key placed inside the bypass module. Then you will need to place the transponder loop antenna around the ignition switch tumbler on the steering column, or in some cases, at the ignition switch on the dash of the vehicle. If you are installing any remote starter series other than the B series, you will need to purchase a separate bypass module, part number 791, or an interface bypass module programmed for your vehicle. For information on purchasing the 791 bypass module or an interface bypass module, visit bulldogsecurity.com. This connection is optional and is not required for the remote starter to operate. When probed during testing, the proper lock and unlock wires, as shown in the color code chart, will cause the test light to glow green or green and red. When the power door lock switch is pressed in the lock position, the lock wire will show red on the test light and the doors will be locked. When the unlock switch is pressed in the unlock position, the unlock wire will show red on the test light and the doors will unlock. This test determines if the vehicle has a Type A positive door locking system. This connection is optional and is not required for the remote starter to operate. Once we have determined the type of door lock system in the vehicle, the next step is to connect the wires from the 5-pin door lock harness. If on your vehicle diagram you have a Type A positive, you will only be using 3 wires in the 5-wire door lock harness. Attach the red and black wire to a 12-volt positive source in the vehicle. Connect the blue and black wire from the 5-pin harness to your vehicle's lock wire. If you look at your vehicle diagram, it will show the proper color and location of the lock and unlock wires. Finally, hook the green and black wire to your vehicle's unlock wire. This connection is optional and is not required for the remote starter to operate. The Dome Light Supervision feature will turn on the interior lights from the remote control with the unlock function. To connect this feature, you will need to refer to the color code chart to see what type of Dome Light Supervision or door pin trigger type you have. The Dome Light Supervision output wire from the main wire harness can either provide a positive or negative output depending on your vehicle's wire chart. The control module is set for a negative output, which is controlled by the third switch on your RS1100B or RS1200B module. Consult your manual for switch location. On most newer vehicles, the Dome Light Supervision or door trigger wire is BCM controlled. This is a direct connection without using the extra relay part number 775. If the color code chart shows the Dome Light Supervision door pin trigger is positive, then before making connections, flip the Dome Light switch in the opposite direction to provide a positive output. This connection is optional and is not required for the remote starter to operate. The trunk release output for the main harness is a 12-volt positive output from the module. If your vehicle requires a positive pulse to activate the trunk, then connect the wire directly to your vehicle's trunk wire as shown in the vehicle diagram chart. The center switch on your control module is set by default to a positive output. If the trunk release wire is negative and is not BCM controlled, then the extra relay part number 7075 will be required. See the diagram for negative trunk release. The center switch on your control module is set to a positive output by default. Flip the trunk release switch in the opposite direction to provide a negative output. Connect the trunk release wire from the main harness to the negative trunk release wire in the vehicle. This connection is optional and is not required for the remote starter to operate. Find a good spot under the hood where you will be able to mount the hood pin switch and be able to connect the black and blue hood pin switch wire to the underside of the switch. Make sure there is enough clearance for the hood pin switch to operate when the hood is opened and closed. Next, you will need to drill the appropriate size hole and then mount the hood pin switch. Route the hood pin switch wire from the underdash through the firewall and plug it into the bottom of the hood pin switch. Make sure that when the hood is open, the hood pin switch wire has a good ground on it. When the hood is closed, this wire should remain neutral. The remote starter engine warning sticker should be placed under the hood where it can be easily seen by anyone that needs access under the hood. It is best to clean the area and let it dry before attaching the warning sticker. After making all connections and testing the remote starter's function several times, gently place the module and connecting wires under the dash. Then attach the steering column covers and the lower dash panel. After reinstalling the column covers and lower dash panel, test the remote starter's functions to make sure you did not pinch or crimp any wires when putting these panels back into place. Thank you again for your purchase. If you have any questions after viewing this video, you can email us at techsupport@bulldogsecurity.com or call 800-878-8007.